Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining our New Africa Network. We are having a program with Mr. Ayo Kimathi. But also he's called Irritated Guinea, which I don't really know what that's supposed to mean, but we're gonna go over so many things today, so he will be able to explain those to us. The reason why we call this meeting is as we do normally. We are New Africa Network. New Africa Network is a network of group people we established this in 2020 when I was still in America, and our plan is to try to link the information, the important information from diaspora and of course on motherland Africa, which is where we are today. So we discuss in many areas, but we are only centered to Black people only. We don't deal with another people. So if anyone may not be Black, we are your friend. We respect you, but this is the only area specific for Black people. We do have a network in person also. We do sometimes. So that being said, let me give microphone to Mr. Ayo Kimathi, and I'm gonna give him first 10 minutes to introduce himself and to tell us about him in deep, so that we know who we are having conversation with. Thank you so much, and Karibu.
All right, Karibu, I appreciate that. My name is Ayo Kimathi. I'm better known as the irritated genie of Southeast. He was saying, what is the irritated genie? There's a book written by Baba Jacob Carruthers, one of our great historians, and it was called The Irritated Genie. The Irritated Genie, when the Haitian people, the single group of people in the history of the world to be kidnapped, taken into slavery into a foreign land, to defeat their enslavers and declare themselves independent. It's never happened in the history of the documented history of the world. When they were asked, how are you able to defeat the British, the Spanish, and the French, not being armed with modern technology in full military combat, and defeat all of them and become free? It's never been done in the history of the world. What accounts for that? And they said we had the spirit of the irritated genie, meaning the angry spirit, the spirit to resist tyranny no matter what the cost, and to push war to whatever level it was required. They moved from one time, they first said independence or death, freedom or death. And when the war got very intense, they said we have to turn it up because this is no longer sufficient, because great atrocities were being committed. So they changed from freedom or death to atrocity for atrocity. They said, whatever it takes to get free, we will get free. And they got free. And so years ago, I was with an organization. I read that book. I brought the book to the brother, said, we got to read this book. And they said, brother, you have that spirit, the irritated genie. So they began to call me the irritated genie. And then I'm from a region of Washington, D.C. called Southeast. You've been to Washington, D.C., so you know. And so,
Hillside, I lived there, Hillside. I think you know which one is that.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
So I'm the irritated genie of Southeast. That's what people know me as, the angry spirit. Pretty much, I've been a lecturer and an author, and I've lectured internationally. In the 90s, I began a lot of the lecturing I was doing and research on the homophile, homosexuality, and pedophilia, that war that was being waged against African people. The introducing of sexual perversion, violation of children, and the resulting behaviors of sexual confusion, men with men, women with women. And I saw in the 90s, as I began to do research and see that this was something that came from European culture, but that was being infused intentionally in our culture to break our family structures and to break our peoplehood and to destroy the men so that they could not properly resist tyranny. I realized then this is a major crisis. And I could see what we're seeing today. I wasn't able to see space and time. I couldn't see when it was going to become the major crisis, but I saw this is the major socio crisis in the Black world community: sexual abuse of our children and the resulting behaviors that come out of it that create dysfunction. And so I became the chief lecturer internationally. I would say the two authorities on the homophile, homosexuality, and pedophilia, the impact on African people internationally, would be myself and another Baba named Baba Mwalimu Barudi. And so as for myself, I've not only done lectures, but like in Bermuda, when they were trying to legalize homosexuality, I was able to come. They invited me out. I did one lecture. After one lecture, there was no profanity, there was nothing inappropriate, but we broke down what was really happening. I was banned from the country for 5 years by the white government. And then the black people in Bermuda, a year later, when the elections came, they voted the entire white government out. So I've lectured around the world in the African continent, and pretty much from 2015 to now, what I do is this. We classify it under one expression: African survival in the 21st century. We are looking at it from the perspective of Baba Garvey came in the early 20th century, and he realized that if we were going to survive the 20th century, we had to rise, unify, and organize as a people and see ourselves as one people internationally and move towards empowering the African continent as our base. The same thing exists now, but we have a greater threat of destruction because, like Baba Garvey told us, the tools of science and technology would be the greatest threats to our people. With the mRNA technology that exists, the weapon systems that they have, the various NGO, the things the crops that they use to try to take people away from natural foods and things of that nature, the different mechanisms they have, African people internationally have to understand what we're facing in order to survive the 21st century. And so my work from this time, 2015 to now, everything that I've done is focusing on something related to the survival of African people in the 21st century.
Very good. Thank you so much. Tell us, how many countries have you been to in Africa?
I'll have to count them. Let's see. South Africa, Botswana, Zimbabwe, Uganda, Ethiopia, Senegal, Ghana. Did I say Zimbabwe?
No, you didn't.
Zimbabwe. Somebody's gonna get upset, so that's all I want to. Did I say Ghana?
So
I don't want one of the countries say you forgot about us. Kenya. I just got back from Kenya in April. Kenya. Uganda. Uganda, they would get infuriated with me. I go to Uganda. I've been there like 10 times. Uganda, and I think I covered all of them. I think maybe 10 countries, maybe.
Okay, around 10 countries. Which one do you think is the best when it comes to Pan-Africanism?
I'll say it this way. In the modern context, what I'm seeing right this second, it looks like the three that I haven't been to, we call it One Africa, but the Sahel region, it looks like those are the ones that are doing the best job of unifying. But from the perspective on the ground, in terms of the general population having a sense of cohesion with African people, Zimbabwe, the fact that they physically fought in battle against the enemy, like physically, I was able to meet generals or captains who were captains in the army under Baba Mugabe. They don't even like talking about it because it was so violent, but they still hold the understanding of what it means to fight for your freedom. And so they've indoctrinated that in the youth. It's still a spirit there. It's not probably as strong as it was in the 90s, maybe, but it's a strong spirit in Zimbabwe of the fact we fought for freedom. It means something to be independent, even if you go through hardships. That's the place I think I felt it the hardest. Not necessarily Pan-African per se, but the strong sense of liberation and being free and independent.
Very good. So now I got another question. Can you, like you say, you have been in Pan-African things, and I know sometimes you say you don't call yourself Pan-African. I think you say you are global Black or something like that.
African nationalist.
African nationalists. Very good. So can you tell us who are like at least 5 people who influenced you in this global or Black nationalists or African nationalists?
Okay. Do you want people who were alive when I was alive, or you want if
Anyone
they
who influenced, who you feel like when I discover this individual, I become who I am.
okay. Of course, Baba Marcus Garvey.
Uh-huh.
It's a man named Dr. Khalid Abdul Muhammad.
Okay, I know that. I know him definitely.
Okay. Ashraf Kwesi.
National Press, I never heard that name, so that means
Ashraf Kwesi.
I need
Yeah,
to do
you'll love Baba
research.
Kwesi. Yes. Um, Kush, the Black Unifier. He was the brother I trained under.
Okay. I don't know. I never heard that one too. I think I've
Yeah.
heard name Kush, but I don't know if that's the right one.
He's from Washington, D.C. He's a local brother.
Okay.
And all right, there's so many people. Let me get this right. Who else? I don't want to miss the big one. Nat Turner.
Netana? Okay. Okay. The first one
Yeah.
to Liberio. Okay.
I, I've always been partial to physical warriors in battle because I always knew that we can't talk our way out of it, but we have to talk before we fight. We got to know who we're fighting and what we're fighting for. But I'm very partial to the physical freedom fighters. Yeah.
Okay. How about Malcolm X? Nothing?
Oh, Malcolm X had a tremendous impact on my life. I read his book when I was about 15, and it totally reshaped, like, it invigorated me in a way that was huge. I would just say the other men that I spoke of had more of an impact, I think, but he was a huge influence on my life.
Okay. How about
It would be
like
interesting it would be interesting to know of those 5 people what that they said or
Okay.
did did it clicked in your coming to consciousness of Pan-Africanism, because it's only Pan-Africanism. Black nationalism, all of that stuff, it's nonsense. It's Pan-Africanism. If we take out all the confusion that was created around the world, it's Pan-Africanism, which is Black sovereignty. Black fight for sovereignty and restoration of our dignity, reparation of our dignity. That's what Pan-Africanism is.
I'll say it like this. What I love that you did, the definition you gave, that definition, I absolutely agree with. What has happened is with the terminology, so many forces have come in and attached themselves to it that what happens is sometimes, like a person like myself, like, and I'm gonna answer your question, but I'm just saying I love what you did. You define what you mean. I agree with it. That's exactly what it is, our African sovereignty.
Absolutely.
What happens
This is
is,
why when people talk about revolutionary Pan-Africanism, I laugh, because you're talking about revolutionary. Pan-Africanism is revolutionary to begin with. That's the essence, you
I,
know.
I, and I'm gonna say this again, and it
Mm.
goes to your point. You understand it because the definition you gave is a foundation. If we all walked with that, we would 100% be on the same page. I'm gonna just be honest with you from here, from our vantage point. The homosexuals have come in and taken the word Pan-Africanism and they're walking with it, and they're even being sent to Africa with money to call themselves Pan-Africans and start things in places like Ghana. And I know what's happening. I know some of the stuff that's happening. And the problem is the Pan-African community has not, I've been working on this since the 90s. I thought it would be natural that those who call themselves Pan-African would say, this is not Pan-African, because you can't be an African if you're not a black man with a black woman in black family. If you don't believe in that, then you don't believe in with the very definition of an African. But that has not been the position. And Pan-Africanism, from the perspective of someone in America, to be perfectly honest with you, it is more homosexual than it is liberating at this point in time. Just the people who use that term. I'm just talking the term, not talking about African sovereignty like the Bible was talking about. We're still African sovereignty freedom fighters, but the people who use that term are mostly homosexuals or homosexual friendly. With those people he asked me about, so Baba Garvey, what he did was what the Baba just said. He opened my mind to the fact that I'm not just a Black boy in Southeast DC or Washington, DC. I am an African who is a brother to all the Black people anywhere in the world. Those are my brothers and sisters. I don't, at this point, I honestly, when I'm looking at you guys, I can see that y'all are from another country, but I have to be reminded of that. You just an African elder. I'm listening to you, just my African brother. You just my African brother. That's all I see, because we're African people. And when we speak in this spirit about our independence and liberation, we're even more brothers, because there's no separation. We all want the same thing for the most part, and we just work it through. That's what Baba Garvey gave me. The breaking of me being American, or I don't even know what that means anymore. My definition is I'm an African, no matter where you put me on the planet. Nat Turner, he's what I call my favorite Black American. There's something about courage and manhood that means something to me. And to me, as African people, we say we're willing to give our lives. It's a sacrifice to give our life, but for an African, no. The real sacrifice is to take a life, because we believe life is so precious. We would give our life before we would take one. But when you get pushed to the level that you have to take life and it's done righteously, in my estimation, that's the most noble, honorable, and brave and courageous thing that an African can do. And so, because he did that with 4 men, to think the most profitable endeavor in the history of the world, the transatlantic slave trade, there's no more profitable endeavor that's ever been embarked upon in business than the trade of African bodies from the African continent. To think that you and 4 men can meet in the woods and go and physically, with swords and sticks, and end that business and actually do it, lead to the ending of that business, the kind of courage and the connection to the creator. He was a preacher. You got to be connected to something to even have that kind of boldness and to do it. So I'm in love with Nat Turner. He's the man that I would always wish I could be. So that's Baba Nat Turner. Baba Ashra Kwesi. He does African spirituality. He does lectures. He takes people back and forth to Egypt and Kemet, over and over, in Ethiopia as well. But he's done the research studying under Dr. Yosef Ben-Jochannan. This is the best way I can describe what he's done for me. This is the honest story. A sister gave me a flyer years ago and said, we're having a lecture by this brother. And the whole religion thing, I never liked that thing, because it always taught me you can't fight. I'm like, I don't want to be around nobody that can't fight, so I don't like this stuff. But I told her I was coming, and I told my mother. So my mother called me while I was driving down the street, because I was young at the time. I was trying to go do something. And she said, you said we were going to this place, so let's go. So I turned my car back around, picked my mother up. We drove all the way out to Virginia, hour and a half out, and we caught it in the middle. And I thought that I knew something. And literally, I sat in, I'm not even a Christian. Even at that time, I'm not a Christian. This man cracked my mind open with so much light of reality and truth of who we were and the history. And religion never made sense to me, but he started making it make sense, showing the African history and where the stories were taken from, that literally I was sitting in the crowd like, is this guy Jesus? Because he's bringing light to my mind. I don't even believe in Jesus, you know what I'm saying? But I'm like literally me and my mother for like an hour just kept looking at each other like, is this real? Like we couldn't believe it. So Baba Kwesi has transitioned me to someone who was anti-religion, to someone who is totally spiritual, to the point now I don't even always make decisions based on me sitting down and assessing. Sometimes I just wait and listen, let the ancestors talk to me and guide me, because I can do that now and trust it. It's not spooky. It's something that we knew, and I may not be an expert in it, but it's part of who we are as a people. Kush the Black Unifier, these people are ideological people. On the ground as a man, what does it mean when you have to go out and tell drug dealers that are selling drugs next to your house, making $1,500 a day, you can't do this no more? And they're not listening with words because they're making too much money. We got to go out there and push them off that spot. And we did it. He was a warrior. And I'm not born the physical warrior kind of guy. I'm more of a thoughtful guy. But walking with him, I would walk into any fight feeling we were going to win, because he was just a pure, unadulterated Black warrior. And that's where I learned like real physical warriorhood. like not just talking. Let's be a man, let's demonstrate who we are, and let's enforce our will when it's necessary and righteous. So I learned that from him. He was super impactful. And the fifth person, do you remember who I said the fifth person was? I know there's one more.
Khalid Muhammad.
Dr. Khalid Abdul Muhammad.
Yes.
Dr. Khalid Abdul Muhammad was the one. We're trained, even if we don't know we're trained to do this, we're trained to limit how far we're willing to say we're willing to go. Your words have a limit of what you can say. What I saw with him, he didn't have any problem supporting Colin Ferguson, who had got on the train and he had shot some white folks because of the racism and stuff like that. He was asked on Donahue, how do you support this? And he talked about how he supported him because he's a freedom fighter. And the way he answered the question and then would make very bold statements, but would always make them make sense. I was like, I don't have to hide the fact that I'll do anything that's necessary to service the interests of African people. I will be wise in what I say, but no, it's okay to feel this way. I'm supposed to feel this way. But until you hear somebody else say it and say it in front of thousands of people and be accepted in saying it, you feel like you have a secret that you're upset about what people are doing to Black people and you want to do something about it. He made it no longer a necessity for it to be a secret. I'm willing to do whatever's necessary to get my freedom. I'm willing to do what Nat Turner did if I have to, if I'm able, and I feel good about it. He made it acceptable and glorious to be a freedom fighter. So that's what I got from Dr. Khalid Abdul Muhammad.
Very good. Yeah. So now I'm going to move on. We got so many questions, but another question I want to ask you is similar to the one you just answered. Can you tell me two people who you think have damaged the most in Black global community? Just two. Like the most you believe that they have completely destroyed our revolution or our way of life, either politically, economically, culturally, believing, and all of that.
Okay.
Or you can add more. You can.
No. What I would need is, because in order to answer that, I need at least give me a parameter. Are we talking a time frame or give me some kind of parameter?
Anytime.
Okay.
Even now too. Even if you have even now, so you can add more, no problem.
That helps.
Yeah.
When you say now, that really helps me.
Yeah.
In this very moment, as we're living and breathing, what President William Ruto is trying to do in Kenya, in my estimation, from my limited knowledge and research of history, if he were successful, which he will not be successful, it would make him the greatest race trader in the history of our people. And I mean that to say greater than Tipo Tip, greater than Mobutu, greater than Blaise Compaoré. We've had a lot of race traders. We've had race traders in America. We've
like
had
what? Like who?
We have people like William O'Neill who helped get Fred Hampton murdered, Fred Hampton Sr. murdered. We had Gene Roberts who helped with Malcolm X's murder. But we've also had people like Bayard Rustin, who was a homophile who was totally fighting against every liberation struggle we had. We even have people who are on both sides. And on the good side, we know the good side, but the bad side, if you just isolate that, like a person like Dr. Martin Luther King, just to be honest now, you ask me a question, I'm going to tell the truth.
No problem.
The negative side of Dr. Martin Luther King, the negative side, if you isolate that from what he did that was positive, he was used to remove the familiarity of our people from the real freedom fighters. Robert F. Williams was in Monroe, North Carolina. He had the entire South armed because they went toe-to-toe with the Klan and they were winning. And so the South started saying, this is how you deal with the Klan. The whites and the Jews in America did not want Black people following the example of Robert F. Williams. So they financed Dr. Martin Luther King to be the presented hero for Black people under their guidance and leadership so that we would not follow that which was working, which was independent. They never want black people to have that type of self-sufficiency.
Now, Mr. Williams, he was one of the deacons for justice.
Well, he's where the Deacons of Defense kind of got their style from. So yeah, he was like that anchor guy who said, arm yourself. And what happened is, this is a very interesting story you asked that, because I think it's very relevant to what we're talking about. So because of his example, groups like Deacons of Defense started presenting themselves. When Dr. Martin Luther King originally did that Montgomery bus boycott and they bombed his house, he had the Deacons of Defense outside arming, protecting his home, winning. So that was because of Robert F. Williams. But what happened to Robert F. Williams? And like when you ask the question, what are the negative sides of Dr. Martin Luther King? They were so busy pushing a Jewish agenda of integration, which is confusion, that what black people were wanting was, look, we want the same dollar for dollar, since we pay taxes, for our schools that whites have. We don't want to be in their schools. We have our own schools. But the Jews wanted black people to be in this integration thing to crash with white folks. So the Jews sent black people down with white folks, men and women, and kissing and all this kind of stuff, into Monroe, North Carolina, where Robert F. Williams was, forcing him to come out to defend them, even though he wasn't interested in integration, but he wasn't going to let black people get killed. The problem was, these black men would get off downtown in Monroe in the Deep South, kissing white women in the mouth in public. We weren't interested in this integration stuff. But when they did that and the whites started attacking them, Robert F. Williams went out there to defend them. He had to flee the country and go to Cuba. He was winning before the integrationists got involved, before Martin Luther King and all of this, we shall overcome and all this love everybody stuff. When we were doing things on our own, we were winning. Because one thing we've learned about white folks in this country after 400 years is only two things they understand. Take their money or take their blood. If you don't give them physical consequence, they're not going to do anything different. But if you do, they respect you. They're not going to like you, but they respect you. You can get some movement from them if you punch them in the mouth or if you punch them in the pocket. Them are the only two things that they learn from here. So we've learned if we want to get something, that's what we do, and it works. The problem is people like Dr. Martin Luther King, and I'm just going to use him just as an example. They get out there being controlled by Jews who have no interest in black people being self-sufficient. And they destroy every self-sufficient organization that exists by crashing it and telling people that we're the bad guys, removing people from being able to even be familiar with our existence, and then taking our people down a path designed to make them dependent and being led along the wrong path. So Dr. Martin Luther King, in the part that he did to play in that, was tremendously destructive in our momentum as a race of people.
And can I just interject with that? Jews who were not really Jews.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Our Messiah Yahshua said, how did he call them? The so-called Jews.
Yep, the synagogue of Satan.
That's right.
Those who say they are Jews but are not, but are the synagogue of Satan. Yes, sir.
Very good. So I think you guys you understand that. So the next question is gonna be.
Can I say one more real quick?
Go ahead.
So we came on this part of the land. In Africa, Mobutu. Joseph Mobutu Sese Seko in the Congo. The physical wealth of the Congo, having been taken over by Patrice Lumumba, if he had been allowed to live, the idea of us being impoverished, which leads to so many problems in the Black world community, because we can say it or not. The truth of it is, when you have no economics, your morality and your integrity begin to decrease because you become desperate. Most people, that's how it works. If we controlled the economics that was coming out of the Congo under Baba Lumumba, the idea of Africa being a broke, poverty-stricken continent, that would not have happened. We were on the road with Baba Lumumba in the Congo, with the resource base there, of being wealthy. Now, what we did with it, we would have had to see, but by the murder of that man, by Mobutu, and since that time, transitioning our economic capacity from the hands of Black people into the hands of whites and Jews in particular, through the blood of Black people, it has created a conditioning of international impoverishedness of Black people that we have not overcome, which right now in the Sahel is beginning to be overcome, which is a beautiful thing, which is why we got to protect those brothers. Joseph Mobutu, I would say, is one of the greatest race traders in the modern history.
Okay, very good. So another question, can you tell us about your books?
Yes. So my first book I did in 2005, War on the Horizon, Black Resistance to the Homophile Assault, is basically helping Black people understand internationally, this is not what we think it is. It's not a person's personal preference. That book is designed to get Black people to see this is a wage of war against culture. And a culture is the very definition of who a people are. If we look, and I'll say this and just wrap this up because I get long-winded, but if we're talking about African people, if you want to see an African and really understand who we are, and we're the only race that this applies to. If you look at our art anywhere in the world, if it's in Ghana, you see a man and a sculpture, he's in a oneness with a woman. If you go to Kemet, you see the temple, Ursamat Rasa Tepenra Ramesu Mariaman in Abu Simbel, right next to him, same height in the mountain, Queen Nefertari. If you go to America, Black art, there's a Black man and a Black woman hugging one another. This idea that we're tied together in a oneness with man and woman, in a unity as a oneness, that is African culture. That is the definition of who we are as African people. If you break that with us, it's more damaging than it is any other race of people because you literally destroy the very composition of everything of who we are and what we know. Our oldest story, Asar, Aset, and Haru, man, woman, child. That is the definition of who we are as a race of people. And so this behavior is designed to be the complete genocide of us because it's deeper than a physical death. More people can be made after a physical genocide. But once you're destroyed of what you are, it doesn't matter. You can be physically walking around, you no longer exist. My other two books I did in 2022, I did the first one, Jews Are the Problem. And then I did my second one I just released last month, Jews Are the Problem Too, The Psychology of the Jew. And those books are designed to get people to understand in the modern context right here today, we have to understand, since we know that we've had issues with whites and Arabs and people around the world, we don't have friends. Even Black people, we have a bunch of people in ECOWAS that want to prevent liberation and freedom fighting for our Black people. We got enemies amongst our own people. But it is important that we understand, why is it that it makes good business for us to be working and partnering with the Russians? They're white. Yeah. Well, if you don't understand how the Jew plays into international politics and the freedom struggle of African people and the fight against the liberation and freedom struggle of African people, if you don't understand it in the modern context, I'll just be honest, you don't understand. And you'll get confused and you'll collide because you don't have a proper understanding who's at the top in the apex. And so these books are designed to help us understand at the apex of the global assassination of the planet. We are concerned about our people, but they're killing everybody right now. We need to know who's doing it so that we can focus our attention properly, and it's the Jews.
Yeah, just in the sake of clarity, because I identify as a Hebrew, and by walk in faith, a grafted in branch as being people of color, being the original Jew. I want to just go back and just clarify, we say Jewish because they're Jew-like, because they're not the real Jews. And these are the ones who are right now running and trumping everything. The banks, the media, the syndications of all communication. And so when I hear you say Jew, it's like, let's redefine so that we're clear, because we speak Jewish, those Jewish, not the true Jews, because then you put a stigma on the true Jews who are Semitic people of color. And they definitely are not people of color.
That's right. Let me say, I take a different approach. The spirit of what you're saying, I agree with absolutely. What I've done for the purposes of multiple purposes. One of them is simplification. And then a second one, my second book gets into it deeply so we can understand. I agree with the term Jewish, but I apply it differently. So what I say is this: To make it simple, Hebrew Israelite, good. Those are the people of the book, right? The Israelites. So fine. When I say Jew, I'm not talking about the Hebrew Israelites. If I'm saying Hebrew Israelites, I say Hebrew Israelites. There's a reason I say Jew. There's billions of people who are Christian on this planet. There's over 1 billion Christians. If I'm trying to say that the Jew is the problem, I need everybody on board. Well, Jesus in the book said, those who say they are Jews. He didn't say those who say that, he said they were Jews. He used the word Jew. He said he was not a Jew. He said that the Jews were, their father was Satan. Then once we agree on that, I got the Christians on my team now. I don't have to be a Christian. Your God said it was the Jews that are the problem and Satan was their father. He didn't say Hebrew Israelites. He didn't say the Israelites. He said the Jews. And they're actually doing real time everything that they say that their religion says they're supposed to be able to do. We can see in Palestine the open genocidal murder of people. We looked at the Olympics. We saw homosexuality, drag queens, and little children being able to see this kind of filth and indecency. We even looked at the opening ceremony in the Olympics where they had Maria Antoinette standing there with her head severed, singing a song, sadomasochism. This is a psychopathic, genocidal construct from a group that has managed to get the kind of power around the planet that they're controlling the destiny of all the people of the world. Why is it important that I say we got to know what they are? This is the important piece. What they're doing is one thing. We can fight them. But if we don't understand what they are, those things I just talked about, even in their absence, we become them. So fighting them doesn't help us because now it's not them that are raping children. It's the uncle in our house that's raping a little child. It's not them that's killing each other. We got these cultural groups that have been around for thousands of years with each other, never had a problem. But now that these Jews have come and these whites have come, really as Jews, and trained us to hate each other, now we out there killing mass atrocities and genocide against each other. We are now becoming them. But if we don't know what they are and that this is them, how can we separate our African identity and self from them? We literally become them even in their physical absence. So when we say Jewish, I'll say this last piece and I'm done. When we say Jewish, that's what I say in my second book, Jews Are the Problem, Part 2, The Psychology of the Jew. What Jewish means when I say it, it means you're acting like any of those things we say. You're acting like a psychopath. You're involved in homosexuality, you're Jewish because it's their doctrine that says that this is acceptable. You're murdering people for no reason, you're Jewish. Are you going around as a Black person singing songs, calling Black people N-words? That's sadomasochism. You're using a word designed to hurt you, calling yourself something and hurting your own people. The love of giving and accepting pain. You're becoming a Jew. You're not a Jew, but you're Jewish. You're doing harm to your own people and yourself at the same time and other people. You're involved in homosexuality. You're becoming Jewish. Are you watching pornography, which is literally a Jewish industry created to defile the value of women? It's misogyny. It's just pure misogyny and make you lose respect for the principle of the female. This is what we're really faced with.
Okay, very good. Yeah, so my question is actually not far. The next question is not far from that. Here is the question. So you point out so-called Jews or Jewish, but it seems like you're trying to differentiate between the Jewish and the white folks. For instance, for me, I don't see any difference between Mark Zuckerberg, whoever it is, and Trump. I don't see difference between the King Leopold and the Queen Elizabeth and then Karl Marx. I don't see the difference between Karl Marx and Zelensky or the president of Ukraine. I see all of them to be white. Why are you trying to separate the so-called Jews from the rest of the fellow white people? Because they are all Caucasians.
That's an excellent question. And you just said something and why it's so important. You said the difference between Karl Marx and somebody. Karl Marx was a Jew.
Yes.
Those are kind of you don't know, right?
Yeah,
but you
I
were
know.
saying somebody else that wasn't a Jew. I mean, but Karl Marx is a Jew. You was comparing him to another Jew. This is why it's so important. Right now in the Sahel, you got 3 African nations that are partnered with Russia. The Russians are as white as you can get. Now, I'm not ever been an integrationist, so I'm not saying, but I'm being honest. we would ask the question, what has Russia's part been in the Atlantic slave trade? They didn't participate. What was Russia's part in colonialism? They didn't participate. They went to the Berlin Conference. They didn't participate. So then you would ask, who has assisted Africans in the freedom struggle when we were trying to get weapons to liberate ourselves out of and get some independence? You would look, it was Russians. So you would go, this is interesting. Does it mean that we want to go marry Russians? No, it does not. They have a right to their Russia. We have a right to Africa. What's happening? If you don't understand the relationship between the Jew and the Russians that they're trying to kill, you don't understand the wisdom in partnering with Russians, who are the second most powerful military on the planet, to fight what we call imperialism and colonialism. But in the modern context, when you really get down to the nuts and bolts, it's actually Jewish control of the African continent via proxy wars by those same white people that you're talking about. So in other words, are the white people the ones managing, physically going and killing black people? Yes. I agree with you 100%. Anybody hurting our people are enemies. But the black people that are getting paid to do the same thing, ECOWAS going in there trying to kill our people, they're the same thing. Like, but who's paying all of them? Who's paying the white people? Who's paying the black people? Who's paying the white people to go and fight Russia? See, we looking at that one, we say, why do we care? Why do we care? Because Russia is the group that's helped supporting us. So we would want to understand, why is Ukraine doing this? Well, who's running Ukraine? Zelensky, Jew. Why do they hate Russia? Because Russia likes freedom and they want to destroy Russia, because Russia has an ancient conflict with the Jews, because they've been trying to prevent the Jews, some have, from doing what their world conquest of we just talked about before is to kill everybody on the planet. So if we don't understand that, what happens is these Jews are killing everybody on the planet. That includes us as African people. All we see is white. If we understand that these Jews are killing everybody, in this moment, people we may not even like, when we can say, hey, you know, those Jews are killing you Arabs. We don't have no friendship with no Arabs. They're not our friends, never been our friends. But they're getting slaughtered in Palestine right now, and it's the Jews doing it. We should be able to say, hey, what the Jews are doing is wrong. And we're working with Russians, who the Jews are trying to go in and destroy Russia through Ukraine. We should be able to say what they're doing there is wrong. And the Jews have taken over the US, which means the policies that we're talking about, or what Ruto is doing in Africa, who's doing that? Are those just regular white folks? No, those are the Jews that have taken over the US, sitting down with Ruto, trying to destroy Kenya and East Africa. It's Jews every way we look. If we don't know that, then we end up saying white and end up fighting with some white people who in this moment have a problem with Jews themselves. But if we don't know that, we're fighting the third or fourth tier instead of focusing at the top tier that's defeating everybody because they know what's going on and the rest of us don't.
Okay, very good. It seems like my time is going very quickly before I finish my questions, but what is your position when it comes to Chinese and white people? Do you see any difference?
Dr. Amos Wilson said, oh boy, I got two answers to that. One, what the Chinese have done in many places like Zimbabwe, I go there. They said, if it wasn't for the Chinese with the things that Western America and the West has done, we would have collapsed. So they've been very helpful to the degree that they've been helpful. But at the same time, we have to be cautious not to let it become exploitation. Dr. Amos Wilson said, so that's the good side. We appreciate China and all they've done to help Africa. Dr. Amos Wilson said, if we think that European colonialism and imperialism is bad, he said, we haven't seen anything what it would be if we allow Asians to do it. He said, because the difference is Europeans at least have this semblance of wanting to pretend to be righteous with their religion and all this kind of stuff. They want to present themselves that way. He said the Asians have no such pretext. Once they come in and want to do something, if they make a decision to do that, they have no desire or interest in pretending anything. They'll just kill you wholesale and they'll do whatever they decide that they want to do. They don't have that need to make it presentable to the world. So I'm saying that to say what they've done so far as China, I think We appreciate it and we need to balance it, but we need to have good leadership so we can say, okay, how far can you come in?
Very
and maintain
good.
a balance in a relationship.
Yeah, very good. Thank you so much for that. I think that's very good point of approach, nice approach. And I got another question here. What do you think, what is the strategy that Black people globally should do in order to liberate ourselves? What is the plan? What do you have as a plan?
I would say I'm going to speak to the very moment that we're in. We have three, we call them the three kings. We have Baba Goita in Mali, Baba Chiani in Niger, and Baba Traore, the young lion, warrior, great leaders in Burkina Faso. We now have what Dr. John Henry Clark said. He said, they never want us to get one good example of what we should do. He said, because we are a rhythmic people. He said, if we see one good example, we'll, in this basic African rhythm, we'll follow and emulate it. And before you know it, overnight, we'll have African world revolution. He says that they don't want us to have one good example. What they are doing right now in the Sahel, we call it One Africa. In One Africa, the AES, should be the global center point for African discussions all around the world. Everything that they're doing that's good, we should be highlighting. Anything we think could be a threat to them, we should be saying it publicly so that they can hear it and say, okay, we got to watch out for that. All of our discussions, we should not have one discussion where we're talking African nationalism or global African sovereignty like the Baba is saying here. We should never have a discussion where we don't mention them, glorify their names, and support them as best we can. And that becomes the interest of our people, because if they can do it successfully and we can support them in doing successfully, the only thing that's going to happen is more African countries are going to say, we want to join One Africa. We want to be more like them. Kenya right now, the young people in Kenya have pushed it to the point they're going to push Ruto out. Well, since we know they're pushing Ruto out, it's not just good enough to put him out and deal with him the way you deal with a race trader. But then what does Kenya replace him with? Well, since we have an example in the Sahel, we now need the brothers and sisters on the continent to be linking those Kenyan youth and the leaders in Kenya who have some semblance of integrity with the people in the Sahel to say, look, as opposed to what they're doing now, where they're taking Kenyan troops and sending them to Haiti, instead of being used to fight liberation movements, which means they're going to go to Kenya to send them same troops to the Sahel. Before that happens, since the young people are taking control of Kenya now, we need to be getting the young people and the leaders in Kenya talking with the Sahel to support the independence and transition of Kenya to become part of what's happening in the Sahel and transition its leadership and direction. That's global African independence and leadership. And that's not theory. It's happening right now. We just have to facilitate that. That should be our focus.
Very good. Thank you so much. Now, I got another question. Most of institutions...
I just wanted to ask a question.
Okay, go ahead, sir.
Proceed. Are you familiar with, I'm sure you're familiar with the fight of the ANC?
Yes.
For apartheid, and the role that people like Ruth First, Ruth Slovo,
yes,
Joe Slovo,
yes,
and others played in it.
Yes.
Where do you put those people?
Man, that's an excellent question. We have a Baba, a brother who was running for president in South Africa now. He did a book called A Subversion of South Africa. And he breaks down, I mean, it's very technical, but it really is mind-opening. The way that the Jews operated in South Africa, the Jews were actually substantially responsible for what we call apartheid. But the Jew operates through proxy. So he has other people operating in front that you see as the bad guys, and they are bad guys. But when the Jew wants to change the dynamic of power, they will come in and help sponsor what would otherwise to us look like liberation movement. Sometimes it really is a liberation movement, but they sponsor it in their own interest, in the interest of directing it. Sometimes they maintain control, sometimes they lose control. So the best way I can make it simple to what you're saying, let's just look in Palestine. Because they wanted to destroy and fight the PLO, they helped to finance Hamas, the Jews. Now, the Jews don't like Hamas, and they knew that Hamas was more militant than the PLO, but they wanted to create that force for their own interest and support them with money. They don't love Hamas. They just gave them money because they were trying to fight another group. Now that Hamas is now saying we're going to fight you directly, now they're using that as the pretext to commit open genocide there. Well, you say, well, didn't they fund them? Yeah, they funded them. It would be just like Slovo. It would be just like the Jews in South Africa that helped ANC. But what we're not watching is they didn't like Baba Mangalisha Sobukwe, one settler, one bullet, the Pan-African Congress. They weren't supporting them. They weren't supporting them. Why? Because they want a militancy that they control for their interests. What we don't talk about is Nelson Mandela was working with a transvestite Jew, Peter Dirk Ouz, who was known as Evita. He gave him, opened the door for him. I have the videos where this transvestite is in front of the students in South Africa doing drag queen story hour. We see it today and we say this is horrible. That started in South Africa. And it was licensed by Nelson Mandela, where the Jews could go through him and open up the acceptance of homosexuality and pedophilia to South Africa.
So in short, Mandela betrayed the revolution?
He is horrible to our people.
Okay.
Absolutely. He was the worst type of race traitor because when they brought him out of prison, South Africa was on the verge of popping. Remember, South Africa had nuclear weapons. If Black people had overthrown South Africa during that time and gotten access to that, we would have been the only African nation in the world with our hands on nuclear weapons. So in order to prevent that flood of freedom coming from the PAC and the real freedom fighters, they said, let's burst this bubble, pull Nelson Mandela out, separate him from Winnie Mandela, separate him from any freedom struggle, make them irrelevant, give him the money, and take the people back into integration and the control of the Jews of that republic. The Oppenheimer.
So you're telling me Chris Hani and all of them were spooked. They just fall into a trap.
I'll tell you, I can't say specifically that particular individual, but I'll say yes.
Because I knew Chris Hani myself personally. He stayed with me in New Jersey.
Okay. I don't know him per se, but what I can say is, in general, under Nelson Mandela, our people were taken directly back into slavery under another form by the Oppenheimers.
Thank you.
I know one thing. I know one thing that is clear. You know, I work for the PAC during the fight for liberation. You know, Dr. Peku was the ambassador of the PAC in, you know, and his daughter, Mahal Peku, who later on became ambassador of South Africa to Canada and then to Japan. You know, they were all in the struggle. I also was friends with Chris Hani, who was on the other side, who was the leader of the military wing, the fort. And I know that the majority of the people from Black consciousness went to join the ANC when Biko was killed. They didn't join the PAC. You know, now, revolution is very complicated and it's dirty. You know, this is why Lenin was telling to somebody, if you want a clean revolution, you will never see one in your life. You know, I don't see a people, one people, as the public enemy of the rest. What I see is profit. And hear me well, profit is the real problem of humankind. profit. Because that's what does slavery, that's what does feudal system, that's what does capitalism, that's what does imperialism, that's what does all horrible crimes you could see. Profit. And the magnification of profit is really the example of the United States. If you look at the beginning of the foundation of this, with John Marshall's ruling, the Dartmouth case, especially, which is historic, you see how profit is the darling, the spoiled brat of this system here. Environmental issues, all kinds of issues are caused by profit. And blacks, whites, Jews, Gentiles, they are advocates of profits in all of them. So this is why I feel like it's important. And today, Africa is under neocolonialism. And neocolonialism is indeed the force, the driving force is profit. Why it's what they called national surplus value is what is the engine of neocolonialism, of colonialism in general. All of that is forms of profit in a way, form of garnering profit. So, my real question is that to me, what should be the priority of Africans of the blood, as Ali Masri calls us, we who have more melanin in our skin? What should be our priority today? What is exactly that is hindering from the empire on which the sun never set, like Garvey, the founder of African Unionism, called it? Because a lot of people get confused. Garvey is not a Pan-Africanist as the founder of Pan-Africanism. He is the founder of African Unionism, which is indeed a necessity for Pan-Africanism. Because without the victory of African Unionism, there cannot be a victory of Pan-Africanism, which has a strategic goal as the African Renaissance. I'm talking about African of the blood. So what, to me, I'm get confused. You are a young, to me, wonderful gentleman. I love listening to you, but I would love for people like you to really be able to look at what is happening in Mali, Burkina Faso, Niger, Senegal, because it's all the same revolution. It's just taken in a different way. Senegal went through the vote. Mali would have preferred to go through the vote. I know that because I know Mali very well. They asked for the president to resign. President whom I know myself, to resign. He didn't resign, and then it developed, and the military ended up taking power. But the mobilizing factor behind was indeed that they're sick and tired of neocolonialism. Neocolonialism, which is just a new form of shirt or clothes that imperialism has, or profit-seeking has, So I would really hope you're such a wonderful advocate of a cause, and you are such a wonderful advocate of Pan-Africanism, as it should be perceived, not as the Confucianists are brought it to be, which is this universal thing. It's for Black people, once again, okay? I would love for people like you to really, where could we find common ground for the liberation of our people? What should be the tactical goal right now of our struggle? In 1945, at the 5th Congress, they were able to define what was the tactical goal around which they mobilized, which was independence and civil rights, no matter how they fought. Malcolm X and them all agreed, all of them, But right now, we are all going all over the place. We are aiming and shooting at all in all directions instead of shooting at the real central enemy, who is really the obstacle for our liberation.
Thank you.
Meaning restoration of the sovereignty of our state and the creation of a state on empire where the sun never sets. I'm sorry, you know.
Thank you. Thank you so
I
much.
just wanted to say that because I'm going to be leaving.
Yeah, me too.
I'm going to listen to what the brother will say, and then I'm going to be leaving.
Yeah, so I think you asking exactly the same question I ask. What is the strategy? What is the something that we should be targeting now? It seems like that's what you are coming back to, like, because you are saying he's going all over here and there, but you like something, one thing only we can tackle now is what? That's the question, right? Mr. Ayo, can you please answer that? Something that we can tackle now that will bring the results, at least that will cover 80% of our liberation.
Well, I'm going to just repeat what I said before. It's not theory. We have 3 nations now. They're not talking about unification. They've come together. Baba Traore said, we will fight to the last drop of blood if those slaves of Salon, those Mobutus from the ECOWAS, if you dare attack Niger, those are our brothers, to the last drop of blood, we'll fight you mercilessly. So it's not no what should we do. It's very direct and simple. All African people around the world, our position needs to be what they're doing in one Africa, we call the Sahel, is the appropriate way for things to be done. In the past, if we were from America, we were in the lead with Baba Garvey and Malcolm. We can put our egos aside. We're not in the lead right now. In the lead now are Africans on the continent, and it's not my opinion which place I like, it's the ones doing it. And they're fighting physically, not talking it, and they're unifying. That becomes the topic of our conversation, focusing our interests in protecting them, not just protecting them in terms of, I mean, they have military, but what are we doing where we are to make sure that the governments here are giving them the proper press? Are we giving them the proper press? Are we making sure that Black media is talking about our 3 kings? And are we giving them the benefit of the doubt and supporting them and promoting what they're doing and saying more of us need to do this, and then criticizing our leadership? Why aren't you being more like them? Why in my country, if I'm in an African country, I should be saying to them, why aren't you supporting them in what they're doing and trying to join that union right there? Are you not African? And you should be saying, wait a minute, you are my representation. I shouldn't be asking, if I'm in Kenya, I shouldn't be asking you, I am a Kenyan. I make the decision what we want. And if we come together in mass and say, we like that example, we want to join, then it's not, do you like it? You're going to, whoever we're going to put in to represent us is going to join this. Like everything needs to be, why? Because they're winning. That's what we need to be doing that's tangible. And there's another piece that's tangible. Once we do this and they see they have support, and here I'm going to give you a real tangible. You want to talk about tangible? And I call it African nationalism. I'm going to stick on my thing because I'm not getting stuck with people that's stuck in, I'm going to stick on this though. You talking about sovereignty? Once we get the momentum and we're all talking this, then we say, and by the way, there's an African nation that freed itself and liberated itself in the West called Haiti. You know what? It's going to be part of Africa now. It is now officially part of Africa as a nation and a satellite that's in the West. And as we protect the interests of Africa here, so too we support the interests of the free, liberated Africans when they have good leadership in Haiti. We support barbecue now, Brother Barbecue that's taking back Haiti. And now we are African people with one of our satellite nations in Haiti in the West.
Brother Swahili, you're going to have to forgive me, because I just wanted to tell this young man, Ayo, the Pan-African Federalist Movement is calling for a united African states. And we call African state any state on the continent or any other place in the world where the overwhelming majority are Africans. And Haiti is an African state. Jamaica is an African state. Guyana is an African state, as much as Senegal, Mali, whatever are African states. And we in the Pan-African Federalist Movement are calling for not the United States of Africa, because that's geographical to Africa, but the United African State. And in these United African States, Africans who are minorities in their countries have an inalienable right to become citizens of this United African State. I'm talking about an unalienable right. This is not a gift. This is not a favor. It's an alienable, because you've never given up your right to be an African citizen. Sorry for I couldn't. I just hear
That's
you
how
say.
we do it. Do it. That's wisdom. Bring it.
Thank you so much.
This is what we call African unification. The brother Ethiopia, Baba. I don't know where you at, Baba.
Maybe he's in.
I'm in the U.S., but I'm from Senegal.
But Senegal, we got Ethiopia. I'm here in D.C. Baba, you in Atlanta?
The other gentleman, he's in Maryland.
Yeah, I'm in Baltimore, Maryland.
Oh, he right up the street from me, right? So we African people all around the world, but look at what we're talking about coming together.
I just would like for us to be connected after. I don't have your contacts. I'm sure that Brother Swahili will do the rest.
Definitely,
you're a part of the network, so anyone that's in this network has access to communication with telephone numbers. If you go through and link on.
No, I don't think that I am. I was just.
Well, now Brother Imani will have to.
This young man just sent me the link.
Okay, no problem. I will definitely. So now the last question.
My ask to you guys will be, we should take back the Pan-African movement. We should take back the Pan-African movement.
Yeah, my battery is running low, so I have to rush some of the questions. There is something we did not touch on at all, which is U.S. election. So at least I want Mr. Ayo Kimathi to tell us his point of views on American coming U.S. election. What is his position coming in?
You know what? You caught me at the perfect time for you to get the exclusive. I haven't even announced this to the public yet.
Okay, go ahead.
You caught me right in the way, and I'm gonna go ahead. You're not supposed to show your secret hand, but you caught me at the right time. I'm gonna go with the spirit. The position we just talked about it yesterday. We've decided what we're gonna do. Our position is, whichever person is running for office that says they support the Sahel liberation movement and the independence of these African nations and recognize them in their sovereignty, those are the people that we'll talk to and we consider and will vote. If you are not speaking positively about what's happening in the Sahel and you don't have the proper political response to what's happening there in favor of Baba Traore, Baba Goita, and Baba Chiani, you're not getting no vote from us. I don't care. I don't want to hear nothing else. What's your position there? And we're going to hold you to that position because we as African people, we're going to be working with them, doing business and whatever else we're going to be doing. I don't care if we are or not, as we're going to say. And these are our brothers and sisters getting their independence. And that's our position. What's your position? If you don't have a position favorable to us and positive, we're not voting for you. That's our answer.
Yeah, by the way, I want to tell you that the gentleman who was talking, he's the uncle of the current Senegalese president.
The young man.
Yes, so even they share same names too. If you know, I don't know if you saw that. I did not want to say that, but he is the older brother of the president father. So they are the uncles. But anyways, I think when it comes to you don't tell people to go to vote for Trump or Kamala Harris, according to what I understand.
Well, I'll say this: don't vote for Kamala Harris.
Why? He is not black.
Well, wait a minute. I'll say this: don't vote for Trump.
I'll say this. I'm putting it, and you can read between the lines. I'm saying if you absolutely feel like you have to vote in this election, which I'm not saying you shouldn't, you do not vote for Kamala Harris. She's an
Why?
Indian. Okay, she's an Indian who hates black people. She's demonstrated that in her policy. She has done nothing to help black people. She definitively stated, I will not do anything that only helps black people. And she's married to a Jew. And I have to counter something that Baba said. I got to be real. He was correct when he said profit is the issue, but all we got to do is ask ourselves the question: who are the people controlling profit on the planet? Jews. So when she's married to a Jew, we don't understand what that means. We got to start learning because we can't be living on yesterday's battlefield. Her being married to a Jew and having a record of hating black people means she's dangerous because she will get black children in the draft that they're doing now, boys and girls, to go into war against Russia. We have no interest in going to war and fighting Russia.
Okay, I understand that. My battery now is on 8%. So, what is can you tell us what is that you think about what is that you think about Africa owning nuclear industry and satellites or like these laboratories that what were creating some disease? What do you think about? Do you think we should own some kind of like something like that?
Okay, so it's two different things. In the again, the Jews that are putting these bioweapons labs and these manufacturing plants for mRNA technology in Africa, it is genocide. It should not be there. This is the Jewish assault on the African continent. For the Russians who are saying we're going to help the Sahel develop nuclear power, that's good. We need some nuclear power and other kind of nuclear stuff because we need to be able to defend ourselves. And while we're in a position to develop this and get it in our own interest, we need to get it. I'm 100% in favor of it in the hands of the right people. And Baba Traore, Chiani, and Goita that we see today, right now, they look like the good hands. We with them all the way.
Okay, very good. So, there is anything that I may forget you may need to touch I did not touch on?
No, I would just say, no, we touched on this, but I would say I think it was a fantastic conversation. I just want to be honest with people. I'm not here to be anybody's friend. I'm here to save you. That's my job. You got to start learning about you got to learn about the Jew. It's not a debate. You have to learn because you're on yesterday's battlefield if you don't know that. It doesn't mean you're not valuable. I love all of our people that are fighting for our people and we appreciate you, but you're behind in the modern warfare. You must know about what the Jew is doing. It doesn't change your sentiment of Africa first and Africa only, but you do have to understand that because we have to know this is not theory anymore. You have to already know who you are. We're now in battle. And in warfare, we know which team we're on. Now we have to know the other teams. And the main team to know right now, you got to know the Jew. They're the primary enemy to the planet. Then we move forward from there.
Okay, yeah. And how can people get your books, the materials, if you have any DVD or any videos, maybe that may not be on YouTube or on social media? How can people get in touch with you in all of those things?
Okay. So our website, and we have electronic copies, so you can be anywhere in the world and order them. We can send them to you through email. Our website is waronthehorizon.com. Again, that's War on the Horizon, HORIZON, waronthehorizon.com. We have a whole store of discussions on all of these topics that we're talking about here. You can also order the book there. You can also on Facebook, Ayo Kimathi, AYO Kimathi, KIMATHI. Also on Twitter, Irritated Genie, at Irritated Genie, or Jews Are the Problem, at JAT Problem. So we have things there, and Rumble at JAT Problem and at Irritated Genie. But most of the things we have right now are at JAT Problem, Jews Are the Problem. Email us liberation at waronthehorizon.com. That's liberation at waronthehorizon.com. Thank you. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and also the war on the horizon is behind you, so people should be able to read that if they don't. Yeah, it's right behind him. I think you guys can see that. So I will definitely bring you back on our network sometimes, and if there is anything, maybe you have as images to communicate, please join us. We are a very big network, actually. We have our legs and hands almost everywhere in diaspora and motherland. So we do appreciate for your time. And I want to say thank you to Mr. Bishop Williams as well, the Hebrew Apostolic, I believe that's how he say himself, to give us this chance to use his Zoom meeting. So God bless Africa. Mungu ibariki Africa. I will see you guys. Au revoir. Kwa heri.
Kwa heri, tutuanani badai.
Okay. Tutaonana baadaye. Bye bye.
Y'all brothers being fancy with the French. I just say, look, I love y'all brothers. Ashe.
That was Swahili.
Swahili, okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we're gonna have to
that's
get you up to speed on that, my brother.
Give me up to speed.
We can't,
Uh-huh.
we can't liberate Africa without a language. So that is definitely something we're gonna have to work on. But yeah, anyways, so thank you so much, gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us on New Africa Network. This was our discussion with Mr. Ayo Kimathi, a irritated genie. Actually, genie is actually a Kiswahili word, which means genie, which is like a ghost or demon or something like that. And that means it's irritated ghosts or irritated spirits. And I will definitely see you on next week. I think I will have another special guest where we're going to be discussing about economics. And that being said, all the information will be posted on YouTube, Swahili for Africa, with K, Swahili for Africa, on YouTube. That's where you can find these videos and other more videos that are coming from different people. Thank you so much. Mungu ibariki Africa. Bye bye.